Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy today's sermon by our pastoral staff at Christpoint Church. We also want you to know that if you have any questions, prayer requests, or need information on any of our ministry opportunities, you can email us at info@christpoint.church. We love you and we are praying that this will be the best year yet. Welcome home.
This is the Christian mentality. Jesus calms the storm. So nobody wants to be in the boat when the storm's going on, but when Jesus calms the storm, everybody wants to be back in the boat. See, if you notice, everybody wants to be in the boat. They want to be where Jesus is. When everything's going bad, nobody wants to be where Jesus is. When everything's going calm again, everybody wants to be back where Jesus is. So it's like, hey, it's like the Christian two-step. It's like the Christian hokey pokey. I put my right foot in, Jesus is there. I take my right foot out because there's a storm going on. I put my left foot in because he calmed the storm. I take my left foot out because I don't want to be there anymore. And then I shake it all about. So, it's the Christian two-step. We live in a society where people want to be on board as long as it's conducive for them to be so. As long as it makes me feel good, I'll be there. And by the way, I got some new glasses this week, so if I fall off this thing, it's because the power's different, I guess, but it's like, whoa, I'm having fun up here. But notice the mentality that is inside the boat. We have Jesus, the peace speaker, inside the boat, and we have the disciples who have the mentality that they're going to die. So we have the peace speaker in the boat, and we have gripped by fear in the boat. Fear and victory reside in the same boat. Storm and calm reside in the same boat. Our seating position in the boat, this is very important. Our seating position in the boat is not what calms the storms in our lives. It's the one who is steering the ship that calms the storms. We're not going to calm the storm. We're not going to make the storm go away. In other words, just because you're the pastor doesn't mean that your storms are less. So your position in the boat doesn't make your storms greater or less. The only thing that makes the storms different is the one who is steering the boat. So keep that in mind. Key point number 3. Your storm's not going to kill you. I'm just going to tell you, your storm's not going to kill you. When we're going through a storm, we think our storm's going to kill us. Yeah, and there's like a little personal storm that we've went through recently, and I was in the yard mowing, and I'm going to tell you, by the way, I'm going to talk about this later on. I've been outside my entire life. I'm just an outside person. I will sit out on the back and work on sermons with sweat dripping off me because I don't want to go in. I love outside. I've been outside my entire life, and as of 2 months ago, in a 3-week period, I've had birds poop on me twice. No other time in my life has a bird pooped on me. This time, right on my shoulder and right on my head. I was literally in this section in my yard mowing, and I was just having my argument with the Lord. And I said it this way, well, dadgummit, Lord, I am sick and tired of always seeing the enemy win. When do we get to win once in a while? My gosh, Lord. And it's like, don't hate me because I'm just being like David. David fussed. So I'm just being like David. So it wasn't 2 more turns. That bird just poops right on my, it's like, well, okay, thanks. It just got better, Lord. So that's great. So, I got a picture of it too. It's like big old, and bird poop's not hot, but it's not cold. There's a lukewarmness to it, by the way. So the storm's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. The disciples thought they would die. They had a I'm going to die mentality. They feared. This is what's so crazy. This is where we get messed up. They feared what Jesus controlled. See, in our lives, everything that we fear is something that Jesus has full control over. All we have to do is make sure that we're being patient and putting our trust and our faith in Him to make sure He takes care of it. It's not the image and the picture, the snapshot that we exactly want. So we serve the storm controller. So here's a side teaching. If Jesus controls everything, then we should never really have a fear of the storm. Doesn't mean we don't have to navigate the storm, but it means we shouldn't have a fear of the storm. So the disciples didn't die in their storm. That didn't happen to them, and neither will you. So key point number 4, God uses the storm to move people. God will use a storm to move people. You didn't think He's going to get out. This is my favorite sermon time of the year. I get to talk about the American Revolution. I get to talk about our freedom. So 1776, August 1776. This is some of my most favorite stuff, and I always clear this with Jim Henson. So our Declaration of Independence has barely been written. The ink is barely dry. This is August of 1776. July 3rd is when the Declaration of Independence was penned. We celebrate on the 4th because it was proclaimed on the 4th. So here we are. Basically, they're 6 weeks just down the road from the independence, the Declaration of Independence being signed. It's a brand new country, brand new infancy, and the British troops are attacking at New York at Brooklyn Heights. They're attacking. They're basically going to take, and see, we were a British colony. That's what we were. So we're going. They're going to take back. They don't want us to have our freedom. So you're not going to go over here and set up your own colonies and your own freedom. We're not going to let you do that. 32,000 troops during this entire battle. This was the single largest during the entire war. This was the single largest battle of the entire war. 32,000 troops, the largest battle of the Revolutionary War, and Washington was outnumbered 4-1. General Washington was outnumbered 4-1. And see, this is what happens. They were kind of on the island, and the troops were moving in on them, and so there was a British loyalist that turncoated, and he led 10,000 of those troops through what they called Jamaica Pass to attack the Continental Army, which was George Washington, attack the Continental Army from behind. So George Washington, very, very, very wise, the founder of our country, so to speak, one of the architects of our country's freedom, and he's assessing this, he's trying to figure it out, and then all of a sudden we get attacked from the rear. The American colonists lost 3,000 soldiers in that one battle. British only lost 396. So what does it look like when it looks, what do we do when it looks like the enemy's winning? See, it was the last blow, one last blow. It wouldn't have taken one more skirmish. And literally, America, its general, its freedom would have been only a memory. They said this was the most important time. This was key for the British Army. If they would have just advanced, they could have completely finished off any kind of uprising, and we would have been speaking the Queen's English at this point in our lives. So Washington and his whole army were trapped. They were trapped. They had their backs against the sea. They had the most powerful army in the world attacking and moving in, and America needed to be saved. So, our sermon title for this week and next week is Saving America. America needed to be saved. If caught, the war would have been over. Washington would have been hanged like that. And we would be an English colony maybe at this point in time in our lives. America needed to be saved, and God sent a storm. Sometimes we just don't want to go through a storm, but sometimes it's exactly what we need. It's exactly the prescription that God calls for. It was reported that there were so many British ships on the Hudson that the wooden mast on the ships looked like a forest. They had sent their entire army to take back America. So God sent a northeast wind and heavy rains into that area, and a storm began to blow, and a storm began to raise up, and literally they couldn't navigate the East River. The British couldn't navigate the East River. So Washington and his troops literally retreat back to the East River, and that storm blew down that river, and Washington took this opportunity. He evacuated his army by ferry a mile across the river to safety. Under the cover of a storm, They moved troops. They moved horses. They moved cannons all day under the cover of this storm. 8,000 remaining soldiers. And under the cover of nightfall, they continued to move troops. So not only did they move troops because the storm kept the enemy away. Sometimes the storm, we don't want to go through our storm, but sometimes the storm keeps the enemy away. And while the enemy was away, they were able to move everything across the river, a mile across the river to safety. Now, when daybreak came, they weren't finished. They just weren't finished. They estimated that it would take at least 3 more hours to move the remainder of the troops, including Washington himself was still over there. So what do? The sun's coming up. The storm is over. What do we do now? And then all of a sudden, this is what God does. God rose a fog from the river. God just rose a fog from the river, and the fog became so dense it was reported that you could only see a few yards. Under the cover of nightfall, under the cover of a storm, and now under the cover of a miraculous fog, God saved our great general. God saved our first president. God saved our freedom, and God saved our nation right there, because it would have been over, because that was almost the last of the army. When the fog lifted, the British could only find an empty camp. General George Washington and the colonists had just vanished into the night. They didn't know where they went. See, at one point, it looked like the enemy was going to win. At one point, it looked like the enemy was going to win. And do you know that George Washington was on the last boat that went across? He wasn't on the first boat that went across. This is the guy who if got caught, would have been hanged and everything would have been over, but he was on the last boat out. So, at what point it looked like the enemy was going to win. But through the storm, God made a way out. Fear and victory reside in the same boat. I'm sure with every boat that went across that river, there was a high level of anxiety. There was a lot of shaking going on. There was a lot of hokey pokeying, and there was a lot of fear going on. Because I'm going to tell you, you don't know if at any minute they're going to start shelling your little bitty dinghy boats going across. You don't know. So there was a lot of fear, but this is what Washington later wrote concerning this miraculous event. This is what he says. I was but the humble agent. This is the leader of the free world. I was but the humble agent of a favoring heaven whose benign influence was so manifest in our behalf, and to whom the praise and victory alone is due. If you're going to build something, you got to make sure your foundation's right. And this tells us that our foundation was on Jesus right out of the gate. The general himself didn't take credit for being wise, evacuation, or anything. He said, look, if it hadn't been for the Lord, none of us would be here. Fear and victory reside in the same boat. Washington chose victory. Let me paint you a picture of this on this patriotic Sunday morning. At the time, the British Empire was the largest in history. This was the largest empire in the history of empires. It was said, and this is true, that their territory was so vast that the sun never set on their kingdom. Now think about having that much property, that much territory. It was so vast that the sun never set on their kingdom. They possessed the most powerful navy in the world. They possessed the most advanced weaponry in the world at the time. They possessed the greatest amount of soldiers in the world. They were the most equipped and the most well-trained soldiers in the world. They were the most well-funded military in the world, and probably in the history up to that point. And they sent their entire army to attack America in its infancy. It's like taking every soldier that America has and attacking a few babies in the maternity ward. I mean, that's kind of like what it's... But they were going to wipe this rebellion out quickly. So what do we do when it seems like the enemy is winning? For 8 years, the British attacked. They didn't get their victory in a few weeks like they thought, or a few months. For 8 years, the British attacked, and a band of volunteer farmers, and ragtag countrymen pushed back the largest military force in the world, and we won our independence. That's the foundation that we build upon. And if you say, well, why should we call ourselves a Christian nation? Because we wouldn't be here without God. We wouldn't be here because that is impossible. You don't take the largest army and the largest navy in the world and attack a few farmers and win. It doesn't happen that way unless God says, I'm going to make it happen that way. So we want our independence by building our foundation upon a relationship with the Lord. And here's the thing. The colonists didn't get paid anything to fight. George Washington, our great general, didn't get paid anything to lead. So many died for our freedom and for your freedom and for mine. So how did God save America? How will He continue to save America? What do we do when it looks like the enemy is winning? March 16th, 1776. Let's go back again, a little bit more actually. Let's go back to March before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. March 16th, 1776, 3.5 months before the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Congress, the leaders of our nation at the time, not yet a nation, issued a proclamation calling for a day of fasting and of prayer. Before we did anything else, you think that we have a national day of prayer now because somebody came up with it? And by the way, one of our administrations, our presidential administrations, canceled every bit of that. And by the way, our county says, I don't care if we cancel or not, we're still going to do it. Come on now. But this didn't just happen in the past years. Before our nation was ever established, fasting and prayer was the first thing, the foundation of everything. The proclamation was sent out to everyone. They estimated 3.5 million people in the colonies. The enemy, this is what they were saying, the enemy doesn't agree with what we're about to do. The enemy won't like what we're doing. So, welcome to 2021. The enemy doesn't agree with you serving the Lord. The enemy wants to kill. The enemy wants to keep April from serving the Lord. She's got one of the most powerful children's ministries with her team over here that I've ever been a part of. So the enemy doesn't want her to do anything. He wants her to get sick. So the enemy doesn't agree with what you're doing. The enemy doesn't want you to succeed in what you're doing. And the enemy is coming to stop you. This is what they said. The enemy's coming to stop us. We can't defeat the enemy, but God can. So I want to read you what was written, and I'm going to skim through it so we don't take so long. In times of impending calamity and distress, this is what was written from the Continental Congress. When liberties of America are imminently endangered by the secret machinist and open assaults on of an insidious and vindictive administration, hitherto to free and happy colonists, true and penitent hearts, most reverent devotion. And he goes on down here and they say, to have people of all ranks and degrees duly impressed with a solemn of God's superintending providence and of their duty devoutly to rely on all the lawful enterprises of his aid and direction, to earnestly recommend that Friday, the 17th day of May, the one coming up next, be observed by the colonies as a day of humiliation, of fasting, and of prayer, to unite and confess our sins before the Lord. This is what they said. And then they go on to say, the enemy's coming. The enemy's not going to like what we're doing. The enemy is coming. And if Jesus is in the foundation, then the building will succeed. This is what they said. The building will be secure. So let's jump back to key points and finish this thing up. Key point number 5. Just because it seems that God's asleep doesn't mean he's not in control. Just because it seems like he's asleep. You know, why doesn't God do this? He's not absent from what's going on. Maybe he's just not doing it in the way you want him to do it. Just because the God is asleep doesn't mean that he is not in control. Let's go back to that storm in Matthew chapter 8 and Mark chapter 4. Mark chapter 4, verse 38, Jesus was in the stern. Now, Jesus was asleep and he was in the stern. So he was in the stern. Jesus is in the foundation. Do you realize that boats are guided and boats are directed and boats are steered from the stern of the boat? That's where everything happens. That's where the rudder is. And so Jesus is not only asleep, but he's in the stern. So that means that just because he's asleep doesn't mean that he's not in control, because he is. If fear and victory reside in the same boat, then, and they do, then this is what we have to make sure. Make sure that we have the right person steering the ship. If victory and fear reside in the same boat, then we have to make sure that victory is the one steering the ship, or we're going to get off track. So, key point number 6. Jesus is not alarmed at our storms. You know, nothing ever, he never goes, I'm sorry, I didn't think about it. Please forgive me. I was absent. I was asleep when you had that issue. Nothing ever catches him off guard. Jesus was sleeping, verse 38, during their storm. Jesus was sleeping during their storm, not his storm, during their storm. So here's the thing. Jesus cares about your storm. He's just not affected by it. See, it doesn't affect him. If Jesus was affected and got freaked out by your storm, then he wouldn't be God. Jesus, he cares deeply for your storm. He wants to walk with you through your storm. Not one time did Jesus ever throw anybody overboard. Not one time did he jump out. Not one time did he abandon them. They were together in the storm, and they survived the storm. And he cares about the storm. He's just not affected by it. Key point number 7. Run to Jesus with our fears. Let's make sure if we're going to run, let's run to Jesus with our fears. The disciples ran to Jesus with their storm. They didn't start figuring out what other options they had. They went straight to Jesus. And here's what Jesus did. He calmed their storm in his time. Not in their time, because if it had been in their time, as soon as they saw the clouds getting black, they would have wanted to go away. But he calmed their storm in their timing. In his timing. So key point number 8. There's victory through the fog. The F-O-G. There's victory through the fog. The favor of God. See, there's victory in having favor with God. God gave us our country through the divine providence. He used storms. He used fog. He used miracles on top of miracles. Do you know that our General Washington, our first president, removed 4 different slugs from his coat? He had I can't remember, 2, 3 horses shot out from under him. He went into enemy fire to lead his troops were wanting to retreat. And he went ahead of them 30 yards from the enemy lines and rode out to try to encourage them to continue forward, and never even got a bullet wound. Never even got a bullet wound. Removed slugs from his coat, but he never got a bullet wound. God will use storms and fog. He will use miracles on top of miracles to establish us as a nation. What won't He do to keep us? What won't He do to keep us? You may have a storm brewing in your life. I promise you He cares. So I want you to do something with me. I want you to remember first of all where you are. Remember first of all where you are. You're in America. And America was established and formed because of religious freedom. Not religion, but religious freedom to be able to say, I worship the Lord. And we built our foundation upon the Lord so we can cry to the Lord. We're here to cry to the Lord. So your storm may be brewing, but I can promise you He's not unaware. He hasn't gone anywhere. He hasn't quit on you. He's not going to quit on you. And He is surrounding you and going with you through it. And I want you to know it's your storm to go through. It's not mine. My storm's different, but we all have a storm. I want you to do something for me. I want to invite you to first of all know the Lord. To ask the Lord into your heart. To say, Lord, I do invite you into my heart. Because I realize where I came from. And I'm going to tell you, our country is fading quickly in generations away from where we started. It is. We're fading away from where we started. Hey guys, Pastor Steve here, and it is freedom time again. Yes, it's that time of year. Freedom Celebration is just ahead, so we want you to make plans to be there. I'm going to kick it over to Denny Wayne. He's going to give you all the details, and we're going to tell you all about what's planned for this year.
White County Executive Dean Wayne Robinson here, encouraging everyone to come out July the 2nd for a 3rd annual Freedom Celebration here in White County. It'll be at the White County Recreational Complex down on the Highway 70 ball fields, what we call the Smithville Highway. So head out west and you'll see it there on the left. Gates open at 4 o'clock. There'll be lots of things there, lots of vendors, lots of food. Just a good time. Can't wait to see you there. And now over to you, Fuzzy.
Hey, this is Ron Fuzzy Pfeiffer, the band Shattered from Sparta, Tennessee. We're looking forward to playing the Freedom Celebration again this year at the football fields off the Smithville Highway. We had a great time last year. The crowd was unreal, and we hope to have great weather again this year. Great music, great fellowship, and great food. So we look forward to seeing you there this year. Take it away, Mr. Steve.
Okay, so while this is our 3rd annual Freedom Celebration, there are all kinds of cool things planned. We've made it bigger and we've made it better. All kinds of vendors will be there. Gates open at 4. Don't forget that. It is on July 2nd on a Friday afternoon. Do not forget that. Everything from food vendors will be there, craft vendors, face painting, you name it. We have it for you that evening, and the band will be playing, and after dark, while the fireworks, professional pyro shows will be shooting the fireworks into the air after dark. We invite each and every one of you, bring your family, bring your lawn chairs, and have some fun. We look forward to seeing you at Freedom Celebration this year.